Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you today. So we are having a fun conversation today with our friend Caitlin. She's going to be here today talking to us about Beltane. I'm Kathleen. I'm president of Idaho Renaissance Fair Inc., and we're excited to have you along with us on this journey. We've had a lot of questions this last year about why Beltane. We have our spring event. It's our new event. It's Beltane Fantasy Festival. And we've had a lot of questions over the last year of why we've decided to use the term Beltane as a part of our fantasy festival. We've invited Caitlin to come and chat with us about that and help us understand a little bit better where Beltane comes from, where the terminology comes from, what it actually means, where the origins for that are, and potentially where it is in the world, because there are, from my understanding, multiple Beltane-esque events that happen worldwide. The two that I had come across most recently was Walpurgis Night, which is German, and then the traditional May Day.
Mm-hmm.
So
the first record is actually from a guy who was both a bishop and a king, and he died in 908. 908.
Okay, that's the same one that I found, so glad to know I'm on the right track.
So that was the very first mention, and it was in Ireland. However, there is no known start date or anything, and it was celebrated in Ireland, Scotland, and Isle of Man all around the same time, and it was very, very similar. There were slight variations, but not a lot. And then it got adopted throughout Europe so they have kind of one in England, they have the German adaptation, and they're Australia, amazingly enough,
go figure,
had their version of it, but that wasn't until later. And then what is commonly known as May Day now is actually the New Age celebration.
Okay.
So Beltane itself kind of died out around the industrial age.
Okay.
And then it got revived by New Age practitioners.
Okay.
And so things have changed quite a bit. And if you've heard of different things, like they call it May Day, or if you have seen even maypoles and flower crowns and wicker men and the Green Man and the May Queen, those are all New Age adaptations that they're reinterpreting a lot of the old folklore.
Okay.
So
that's very interesting. So I'm very curious about like what is new versus what is old, but can you tell us what the definition of Beltane is?
So Beltane is fire festival. It is essentially Bel's fire, and Bel or Bile or Belanus.
There's a few ways that we've heard it, so
sorry. I see it, and I don't know how it's pronounced because it's Celtic and I don't speak Celtic.
Yeah.
So he was the god of fire, also known as the Bright One, and he is very closely related to the pastoral environment and that sort of life.
So what I found on him is that he's considered their sun god.
Said that he is the sun god, but there is actually no lore relating him to the sun.
Okay.
So
learn something new.
Yeah. So they call him a sun god in some aspects, but in the original Gaelic religion, he was not. He was just associated with fire.
There you go.
So he is more associated with the herdsmen.
Okay.
And dealing with livestock, with planting and agriculture, but mostly with animals and fire. May Day or Beltane traditionally happens on May 1st now. But then it could happen, it was basically halfway between spring and summer, like right in the middle.
Okay.
Or the other time that they sort of did it on the first new moon after the equinox, which means the first moon dark after the vernal or spring equinox.
Okay.
So it is generally celebrated May 1st or April 30th now, as the halfway point.
Okay.
Because
between official spring and official summer.
Right.
Okay.
Because that was when they would take their livestock out of the barns and they would go into the pastures for the summer. Like, this was the mark where they would leave stalls, leave the towns actually, and go out to the pastures. So they would light their fires. They had 2 fires, and they would walk the cows and other livestock, but mostly cattle. The cattle were the expensive ones, and take them between the fires to purify them. And in the Scottish history, they actually blew the smoke onto them. The scientific
rid of disease.
The scientific reason is smoke is really cleansing. It gets rid of all the bugs. It helps with the fleas. See? It helps with all those
My
things.
brain was on the right track.
But back then, they didn't understand that. They just knew that if they watched them by fire,
between the fires, they would be healthier.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because it was good for the cattle, they assumed it was also good for the people.
Okay.
So often, people would also walk through, and that's actually one of the new things that they've done, the new developments, is they themselves will go through the fire. And it's also, you'll see a lot of people marking themselves with the ashes.
Okay. I have seen that in some cultures and traditions where in the springtime when they have their big fires, they will like wipe it on their faces or on their arms or something for different little ceremonies that they have. Yeah,
they're bringing the fertility with them.
Interesting. Okay.
And the purification of the smoke and the cleanliness of the ashes is just, you're refreshed for summer. Okay. You're ready for moving on.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so the next question that we have that we've been given a lot is, why are we associating that with our fairy festival? And for us, a lot of that has to do with, we are using the Seelie Court and the Unseelie Court. So we have Queen Titania and Queen Mab and Oberon as our fairy royalty, basically, because there's not really another term for it, even though royalty's a human term, not a fae term. And along with that, because the Seelie and the Unseelie courts are traditionally Celtic, it made sense to bring a Celtic term for a traditional fire festival and a spring festival into our fairy lore.
You picked the perfect one! Because Beltane is actually the night that the veil is thinnest between humans and the Fae realm.
Yes.
There are many, many, many traditions to appease the fairies, but there are also, this is one of the few times where humans are welcoming Fae into their lives.
Yes.
And into everything.
Yep. You mentioned that fire is kind of a big portion of the traditional Beltane festivals, and I mean even the modern Celtic Beltane festivals are a fire festival. So we at our event, we are not allowed to have big bonfires because it's not our property. We have to respect that it is, county property. So we instead have a fire stage where we have for performers who deal with fire in their acts primarily, that is right by the entrance, because it's really, we wanted to bring a little bit of that fire aspect into our event without going overboard.
So another way that you can bring fire in without actually bringing fire, and anybody who wants to come can do this too, they decorated everything with yellow flowers.
Yes.
So it's believed that this was to symbolize the flame in nature and the flame in life. But it's also because there were a lot of yellow flowers that came in the spring.
Well, and from my understanding of just agriculture, there's a handful of yellow bushes and yellow flowering, like bushes that they flower with yellow flowers.
Yes.
That those always bloom first.
Yes.
And so that also kind of correlates.
Yeah, so there's, long before they did the May pole, which is fairly recent adaptation, they had the May bush, which was typically a hawthorn bush. And they decorate their bushes. And they decorated their bushes with ribbons.
Nice.
And with blossoms.
Fun.
And with shells.
Oh, see, I like that.
Yeah. So if you want to have your own little maypole that isn't a maypole but a bush, and then they would add different things, and it would just kind of help them, like this was their hopes and their blessings for the year.
So it's basically like a miniature wishing tree. And this is our prayers and our hopes and our dreams for the year. We're just going to tie it to this bush.
Yeah. The reason that Beltane is actually a thing today is believed to be because of globalization.
Okay.
And so people found out about it because after the industrial age and it sort of died out and wasn't as big of a deal, globalization really took off and everybody was learning about everybody else's culture and people were traveling to other countries all the time and bringing their culture with them.
Interesting.
It became why aren't we doing this? There were also a lot of ties to Christianity, which helped it spread too, because when more pagan beliefs died out, which all of this occurred way before Christianity even came to those countries, and once it did, the Christians they tried to adopt Christian and pagan practices at the same time.
Yeah, they tried to marry a bunch of them.
Right, and so this one actually ties in most with the Pentecost, which happens right around the same time. It's 50 days after Easter.
Okay.
And there's a lot of, the Pentecost has to do with the Holy Spirit, which is fire, the fire in the Spirit.
Okay.
There's actually talk of, or theories that it may have been created to relate to Beltane, but there's no, once again, history.
Yeah.
You never know which
It's
came first, chicken or the egg,
Yeah.
and which influenced what. But a lot of times, very devout Christians, later on, would still do their Beltane rites because they knew that this was what helped their cattle. This was what kept them alive.
Okay.
And some fun little tidbits before we end it. There's some different things that you should know about May Day. If your foal, your baby horse, was born on May Day, it was fated to kill a man.
Interesting.
Yep. If your cow calved on that day, it would die.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Very bad luck.
You don't want to have any baby horses or baby cattle on May Day, apparently.
No. And you don't want to have a baby human. Births or marriage were also considered very ill-fated if they happened on May Day.
Okay, there you go. Try not to deliver a baby on May 1st.
In the Gaelic culture, in the original Beltane, it was believed that that was when the spirits came and they were happy, good, positive experiences. And so they would leave out food and bread to welcome home travelers who had died in other places.
Interesting.
So they would know to come home and their loved ones would come and visit them.
Oh, that's kind of sweet.
The veil was thin between all the realms.
Oh, thank you so much for chatting with me about all of this and teaching me some new things. Super appreciate it. And thank you guys for coming along with us on this interesting journey. And we hope that your history is as fun as our history. And we'll talk to you next time. Huzzah!